Hi, I'm a possum and I find garbage. Today's not quite garbage is Zootopia 2, a sequel that I guess took 9 years to make for some reason. Now, I did not hate the movie. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit, which is relatively high praise coming from someone who openly hates Disney for what they've done to their IPs over the past decade. But there are some things about it that just hold it back from greatness. For one thing, it's kind of just more of the same. Judy and Nick work together to solve a mystery. Nick doesn't want to, but is forced to, and both of them have to overcome society's prejudice toward them, as well as their clashing personalities and goals which put them in conflict with each other. It's all the same beats, only they have to team up with a snake and an annoying beaver this time. There's no real improvement over anything the first movie did. If you look at something like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and see how it's a vast improvement over the first movie in terms of animation, characters, themes, and narrative complexity, I don't think it's unfair to expect Zootopia to be a huge improvement over the original after 9 years. But the sequel plays it safe and just repeats what worked for the first movie, with a few new additions to the lore of this world here and there. Instead of making yet another movie about prejudice, since that theme was already covered by the first movie, why not make a movie about a different social issue? There are plenty to choose from. How about social media addiction, or fatherlessness, mental illness, loneliness, people filling their god-shaped holes with plastic idols? I guess none of that would get BlackRock to pay Disney that sweet, sweet ESG money. So they made another movie about the same theme without really saying anything new or interesting about it. Speaking of which, my one major criticism of the first movie is that doesn't really work as a racism allegory, if indeed that is what it's meant to be. If the message is that everyone is basically the same and therefore everyone is deserving of equal treatment, then a movie about different animal species living together isn't really compatible with that message because the different species are intrinsically different in ways which are impossible to ignore. The movie even seems to go out of its way to draw attention to these differences. They literally have the city divided into different biomes because the animals that can live in one can't survive in another. They even have a sort of mouse ghetto for the smaller animals because they need their own special housing away from the larger animals that might accidentally step on them. You can't really pretend these different animals are equal when they can't even live in the same neighborhoods, not because of socioeconomic factors or racism, but because they just physically can't. The first movie is all about Judy becoming the first rabbit police officer because no rabbit had ever become a police officer before, and that's for incredibly obvious reasons. This isn't like the debate over whether or not women can compete with men. There's a vast gulf of difference between a rabbit and a rhinoceros. What's Judy gonna do if she has to arrest an elephant hopped up on PCP and he pulls out a knife the size of a pine tree on her? I mean, yeah, the movie shows her doing all kinds of acrobatics when she needs to overcome her size, but that just calls attention to the fact that she has to do all of this extraneous effort just to keep up with what the larger animals can do with no effort at all. The only reason the smaller, weaker animals can live in this town is because the bigger and stronger ones accommodate them, at least most of the time. Their existence is entirely dependent on the goodwill of the stronger species, and this means they're fundamentally unequal. I don't think that's the implication you want for your anti-racism movie. This broken theme continues in Zootopia 2, where Snake has to carry around anti-venom in case he accidentally jabs someone with his tooth, and he can't tolerate cold weather because reptiles can't regulate their own body temperature. I guess the real theme of Zootopia is not so much an allegory for racism, but the idea that you should accept other people's differences and treat them as equals, even when they're clearly not. But that's kind of hard when those differences are so extreme that you physically cannot live next to each other or do the same jobs as each other, even if you want to. In such a world, inequality becomes unavoidable and insurmountable. Earlier I talked about how Zootopia 2 is basically a retread of the first movie, but it's so slavishly bound to the formula of the first movie that it feels like nothing has progressed since then. It's not clear how long after the first movie this one is supposed to be because even though it's been 9 years in real life, everything in this movie feels like it just picked up a couple weeks later. The other cops still treat Judy like a rookie, and nobody appears to have aged at all, but Mr. Big's daughter has a daughter now, which implies that this is at least a few years later. It doesn't make any sense. Judy and Nick should both be really experienced and respected by now, but everyone, including the other cops, all talk down to them. Even after they saved the city in the previous movie. Chief Bogo is still dismissive to Judy for no reason other than the movie needs that to be the case. When Judy finds evidence of a snake in town, he refuses to believe her, even after she shows him a piece of snake skin. It never even occurs to him that the person who uncovered the conspiracy in the first movie might be onto something and he should probably look into it. Maybe they did this because they needed the police to be antagonistic this time, that being one of the few thematic differences from the first movie. Judy and Nick get framed for a crime and become fugitives, which effectively makes the police minor villains this time. I guess in the wake of the Summer of Love, in which hundreds of black-owned businesses were violently looted and burned in the name of ending racism, Disney realized portraying police as the good guys wouldn't fly with the progressive crowd, so they made them literal fat, ugly pigs who chase around our cute and cuddly and highly marketable heroes. Before this movie came out, there was fan speculation that Judy and Nick may have gotten married between movies and had a kid, but that's not the case. There's a scene in the first 5 minutes where they're pretending to be a couple pushing a stroller around, but that's just them in disguise while undercover. There are several scenes where they get mistaken for a couple, but it doesn't go anywhere. So if you're one of those shippers, you're being baited. And I know some of you are also hoping for this, but no, the snake doesn't swallow anyone alive. So no, Judy and Nick are not a couple. There's no romance in the movie because movies just don't have romance anymore because Zoomers find it triggering or something. I don't know. There are times when it sort of teases at the possibility of romance just because of the way they look at each other, and it even looks like there's going to be a love triangle at one point, but the movie never actually goes there. And it's not like a movie needs romance, but maybe the movie could have benefited from that extra layer, and they could have done a thing about them having to deal with the discrimination that comes from being an interspecies couple or something. That at least would have been new territory left unexplored by the previous movie. There are these two German goats, however, who are both male, or at least I think they are. Half of the female characters in this movie I couldn't tell were female until some other character said so. And I'm not sure, but I think the movie briefly shows a picture of them kissing. And if I didn't just imagine it, that's the sort of gay representation that can easily be cut out to get past censors in the foreign market, because Disney wants those progressive good boy points, but they're also cowards. Speaking of goats, I'm glad to report they didn't do that stupid screaming goat meme. So that's at least one trend they didn't follow, but the movie at times seems to have almost Tumblr-esque sensibilities. For example, there are several scenes where characters will psychoanalyze themselves and bluntly explain why they act the way they do via therapy speak. This is normally a gigantic faux pas when it comes to writing, but the movie does it kind of like a joke, except not really. It sort of comes across like they wanted it to be funny to serve as a shield against criticism, like winking at the audience while doing something they shouldn't be doing to let the audience know that they know they're not supposed to be doing that. On the subject of humor, again, it's basically the same thing as the first movie, where the joke is essentially, what if these animals were people? To be fair, the first movie got a lot of mileage out of that. You see a giraffe's car, the DMV is run by sloths, hamsters travel via plastic tubes, and so on. Similar stuff happens in this one. There's this one lizard guy who talks all serious and dramatic, but then he does this goofy run on the water, and we realize he's one of those water-running lizards. That was kind of funny. I can't really remember much else though. But there's also things that are just kind of stupid. Like when we see Nick watching TV, and he has on a streaming service called Hulu Zoo, when the obvious pun should have been Zulu. But a lot of the humor is that sort of thing. They repeat that gag about bootleg movies from the first one, where all of the titles are animal puns. There's a music festival called Burning Mammal, that sort of thing. Then there's references to other movies. Now, the first movie did that too. Mr. Big was clearly a reference to The Godfather, but this movie references The Shining and The Silence of the Lambs. At least the Lambs one fits because they use a lamb character for the gag. But if you're gonna put references to adult movies in your family movie that no kid is gonna understand, you might as well make references to The Turin Horse, or Bear, or Zoo. I don't know what else to say about Zootopia 2. If you like the first one, you'll like this one because it's pretty much just more of the same. If you didn't like the first one, you won't like this one because it's more of the same. I feel like they played it safe and consciously avoided doing anything that might be challenging to the audience. And it comes at the expense of what could have been a more interesting movie. Again, The Last Wish comes to mind. If Disney wasn't so risk-adverse, they could have taken this franchise in a bold new direction with an updated art style and more complicated story, but they didn't. I didn't hate the movie, but it just feels like a been there, done that situation. Alright, that's it. Subscribe if you're not already. If you are, check my channel for other videos you may have missed since YouTube doesn't always tell you why I upload. Like this video, leave a comment for the algorithm, send me your fan art, and support me on Patreon. The links are in the description and the pinned comment. Bye.